Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Okay, so this is we're a little over a month into the traditional rainy season retreat, and that takes place in Asia. Of course, it's not very rainy here, but it's a time when monastics Buddhist monastics in the Theravada tradition all around the globe have, by our, say, rules of training and discipline, we enter a period of 3-month retreat. And say, whether we're in Thailand or here in America or there, this year there's monks entering the retreat in Norway, new branch monastery in Norway, new branch monastery in Brazil. So it's just as following the Buddha's instructions to set aside our usual duties and give ourselves time for retreat. And I mean, it's a good example for all of us, because I think we, say, as human beings, we all need some time for retreat, and whether it's say 3 months as is prescribed in the monastic form, or it's a month, 2 weeks, a day, just taking time to slow down, to stop, and devote oneself to some pursuit of that which is leads to peace and clarity. Because part of that is engaging in formal meditation, and even in a monastery, it's not as if our life is fully engaged in meditation in the sense of formal meditation. Some people think that, and then they're surprised when they come to the monastery and somebody gives them a shovel and tells them there's work to do, but that it's a reality. But to be, as we began this session, of short period of chanting, period of meditation, using that meditation time for trying to settle the mind, because it's difficult for our minds to settle down. The habits are pretty deeply ingrained, and the compulsion for proliferation, worry, some kind of obsession, it's universal, and whether one's a layperson or a monastic, it just is the way the mind works, and just learning how to work with it and to understand it, and ultimately to train it. So times of formal meditation are important in learning to understand the mind, because it isn't through trying to make the mind conform to some ideal of what you think it should be that somehow there's a resolution. We all know how we should be. We should be peaceful, we should be accepting, we should be equanimous, we should be all sorts of things. Reality is that we're not, and we have to understand what is it that is creating the problem, or that is the focus of our attention, that ends up being disturbing or upsetting. This is why the Buddha encourages us to reflect on in terms of how do we understand the mind, and there's different templates that the Buddha gives for reflection and creating a mirror for the mind, so that say a template of investigation around 5 hindrances. In the scriptural language, nivarna. And nivarna is usually defined as that which clouds awareness and obstructs discernment. So that recognizing, there are these tendencies of the mind. The traditional hindrances are sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt. So those are things that trip us up, and tendencies that create a certain negativity in the mind. The Buddha used the kind of like classifying or viewing our experience, sometimes in terms of what's wholesome, what's unwholesome, what's skillful, what's unskillful. And say that nivarnas are always, say, unwholesome, unskillful. And it isn't as if it's really bad and awful and evil and whatnot, but it's like just maybe rage and resentment can be sort of recognized, but say sleepiness and drowsiness, it's sort of pretty ordinary. But it's unwholesome or unskillful in the sense that the mind is not clear, it's not present, it's not ready to understand things clearly. So then using this reflection with the 5 hindrances is very useful, and because when the Buddha gives the encouragement for training the mind, a path for training the mind, it's an integrated path that relies on a certain say moral restraint, integrity, virtue that helps to settle the mind as well, sort of restraining it from things that are not very helpful, and being able to see things in their true nature in terms of a basis for wisdom or discernment. But they say that clarity and understanding is based on a mind that is settled and steady, and what the Buddha describes as samadhi, or concentration, stillness, meditative stillness. And that mind of meditative stillness, clarity, stability, is one that is there's an alertness there. There's a clear clarity, a presence there. But there's also a kind of a couple of the ways that the Buddha describes that mind of samadhi is one of a certain agility or malleability. It's not stiff. It's not rigid. It's not fixed. And so, sometimes we think, I got to concentrate my mind. I got to fix my mind on this meditation object. I got to stop my mind from this kind of tomfoolery of thinking this and that. And we make ourselves really tight sometimes, trying to be peaceful, and it doesn't really work. But because there is a malleability, an ability for the mind to move and shift and see and investigate and reflect, and that's an important quality and application of say stillness and clarity. It isn't as if it's rigidly fixed. It's like Ajahn Chah in his kind of classic description of the mind is a still flowing water, which is really a beautiful image in that it's still. It's like water that appears to be still, but is actually flowing. Water that is flowing, but there's a stillness to it. So the mind is like that. So the mind needs to be able to have this malleability and a ability to adapt and shift and in order to really be present with circumstances clearly. And another word that the Buddha uses to describe, say, samadhi, meditative stillness, is ready for work. And so oftentimes when we begin meditation, it's almost like I just want to have a vacation from my mind. I don't want to have to deal with anything. When I get peaceful, then I won't have to deal with anything. And but that's not really how the Buddha views it, in the sense that we make our minds peaceful so that we can really do the work of investigation and seeing things clearly, seeing our own internal world clearly, and see the world outside us more clearly. Because it's that engaging with mindfulness and discernment that allows the mind to be peaceful and free. So as we begin meditation and recognize that there are certain assumptions that we oftentimes bring, and to be lifting up the willingness to apply our mindfulness to, say, our meditation in a way that allows it to really see clearly and to see what is it that creates a hindrance to clarity. What is it that, where are the obstacles that come up? How do they manifest themselves? And so that this template of sensual desire is a way of investigating what comes up. So usually, when we sit meditation, it can be any of the four postures are a fair game for meditation, but generally, physically to slow down and sitting in an upright posture, sitting in a still position, and then bringing the attention inwards. The most common meditation object is the breath. There are many meditation objects, but that's the most common one. And just start paying attention to the breath coming in, breath going out, breath going in, breath going out. And then usually what we find is that the mind gets bored and it looks for something else to do. And of course that's what's our go-to habit when we're bored, or we're not able to engage in something that is interesting or exciting or stimulating. Because the whole reason for using the breath as an object is that it's soothing and settling and it's neutral, so that there's nothing that exciting about the breath, unless you're not breathing, and then it gets really exciting. It's not very peaceful usually, but that paying attention to a neutral object and realize, the mind starts looking for something to engage in, and it's not as if it has to be. There's any number of things that the mind normally goes to. Whether it's food or sexual imagery or some memory of something that was exciting in some way or interesting, but to be able to recognize, that's a movement out from the present moment, looking for something interesting, something to fascinate, something to stimulate, and rather than trying to shut that down immediately and go, I've got to get back to the breath, but starting to pay attention to, that's a hindrance. That's actually, the Buddha talked about this, and that's what provides the obstacle to discernment and the clouding awareness. So it's like just really making that clear and understanding. That's what the mind is doing. Now, how can I engage skillfully with the breath, a neutral object like the breath. And so then it's, because it isn't as if we just magically decide that we're going to be mindful and peaceful and concentrate the mind on an object. We have to be interested in what we're engaging in, and we have to be able to lift up interest, because that's usually what and that's we have to use thought, or the let's say the directing of attention. It might not necessarily have to be a full-formed thought, but you have to direct attention so that it's directed to the object of the mind, and whether it's the breath, or it's a mantra, or whatever seems to be useful as an object of meditation. There needs to be some conscious application of attention, and so that just learning how to return to that intention and that effort, and engaging that sense of interest and exploration of how do I not get trapped by that distraction, and then and sometimes it's especially with sensual desire, it tends to, one is looking for something pleasant, attractive, beautiful, interesting, and that's and we tend to paint things in that way. Oh, if I got this, it would be really, really good, and all of my problems would be over because I have this thing good. That's just the way the logic of the mind works, the logic of the defilements anyway. So that being able to say, oh, wait a minute, is that the whole picture? And you say, wow, what I'm seeking as for gratification, stimulation, well, it's not as if that's the whole picture, because whatever it is, because there's always a downside. There's always a drawback to the things we seek, we desire, we expect will provide that pleasurable sensation, either in terms of it. Just its own inherent impermanence, so the reflecting on that, or it's like even just something as basic as some kind of food that you really like, but then you have to eat it every day, and it gets burdensome. It's like sometimes when you're sick or you're not, then you have to your diet gets limited, and then you get to and then when you first get sick, and but then there's this kind of good food that you can actually eat, and you're supposed to eat, but then every day, it's just this gets so boring after a while. And that's the nature of the mind. It needs to be, and we're always looking for something else as a gratification. So that recognizing that as that pattern, and internally being able to turning attention to awareness, mindfulness, presence, because when we're really present with something, when we're really mindful, there isn't the same kind of say boredom and disenchantment with something. It's just sort of it's engaging, even if it's really something quite innocent or neutral. I remember one time being in retreat for a long period for a year, and meeting it was in England, and person I knew had been away, and they came to the monastery to visit, and then they saw me and asking. They knew I was in retreat. I asked how my retreat's going, and then I'd been in retreat about 6 months by then. I said, and they were, what do you do during this period of retreat time? And it was sort of, my life was incredibly simple, because I get up early in the morning and I'd meditate, do some yoga, have a cup of tea, meditate, do some walking meditation, go and have the meal, come back, do some walking meditations, do some sitting meditation, do some yoga, have some tea, do some more meditation. Some meditation. It was wonderful. And she looked at me like as if it was from another planet. Says, isn't that boring? I said, no. It's just, and then I started thinking about that after. On the outside, it looks like you're doing nothing, and it's just no. But because there was this, the mindfulness and peacefulness of my clarity of mind, that awareness was really unobstructed, then nothing was boring. Everything was really interesting and satisfying. So much of what we, what our mind is unable to sustain attention or awareness, and then it looks for an object outside of itself or some other gratification. So then it and then has to keep doing that. Learning those patterns, learning those impulses, and finding ways to encourage the mind to be attentive or sustain attention, and it really requires patience and being alert to the habits of the mind, but then recognizing those and that's where, like, having these templates of investigation. That's sensual desire, and then you can right, okay, I can let go of that, as opposed to getting swept up with it and getting carried along by it. And the Buddha, one of the images that he gives for this hindrance of sensual desire is being in debt, and that one is whenever one is in debt, then one is it hangs over one's head, and there's a say the person or who one is in debt to, one is always beholden to them, and so that we're always beholden to sensual desire, and it's always calling us in, and so that by being able to cut those ties to desire, there's a freedom that comes. The other hindrance that the Buddha points to, and it's in another kind of flavor that the mind latches onto, is ill will, aversion. And so that say, like, sensual desire paints the world in kind of beautiful colors and attractive, pleasant, pleasing. You want to go to it. Aversion, ill will, paints things in a very different color, and everything's irritating. It's frustrating. It's something to be take exception to. It's something we can be critical of, and that agitates the mind. It's like in the same way that with sensual desire, the mind is sort of out of balance because of that pull toward desire. With ill will and aversion, the mind's it's kind of out of balance because it's focusing on the say a negative side, the things that one doesn't like, doesn't want, shouldn't be this way, and that again that there's an imbalance and agitation that's in the mind that it is not peaceful, it's not settled, and it's quite it's an obstruction. And sometimes when that's a habit of mind, you might have a lot of logical evidence for how awful it is, but it's important to sort of recognize this is a hindrance. This is an obstruction. It is really creating this obstacle to awareness and clear seeing, and then even if something is, even if it's right, in the sense that maybe somebody did say something that was inappropriate, but the mind that goes into the story of aversion and ill will, it's not worth investing in it. It just doesn't help the mind be peaceful and clear, or whether the situation is not perfect, but it doesn't help to take exception to it, kind of caught in negativity, and so that there one is investing in those, say, unwholesome, unskillful mental states and perspectives that don't allow the mind to really settle. And so that's where, say, the classic antidote to this hindrance of aversion, ill will, is loving kindness, and usually, especially if you're already in a mood of aversion, and somebody advises, well, you should spread loving kindness. And you say, what do you think? Why do you do it? Just this sort of pushback with aversion again. So that one has to approach the mind, and in order to see that it is suffering, and recognizing, the suffering, the pain of aversion and ill will, and for as right or righteous as one may feel, it's still aversion, ill will, and negativity, and it's not fruitful. And and then recognizing that quality of loving kindness that the Buddha teaches is, say, the first person that one is instructed to direct loving kindness towards is oneself. And usually people, one is oftentimes it's counterintuitive in that it doesn't feel right sometimes to be doing it. But that is definitely the classical model, because it's in order for one to begin to reap the fruits of loving kindness, one has to recognize So we need to be giving the opportunity to ourselves to have that sort of well-wishing and kindness toward ourselves. In order, we have to learn how to look after ourselves skillfully, and that's an act of loving kindness. And it's important to be able to to recognize that power of it. It's like I remember Bhante Gunaratana, an elderly Sri Lankan monk, telling the story of it was the first time he went to lead a retreat in Europe. This is a long time ago, and the person, one of the organizers, of the retreat was asking him, because he was supposed to be a Theravada meditation teacher, vipassana, insight practice, and then asking him if he's going to be teaching loving kindness, and Bhante Gunaratana actually does use it as a general part of his teaching. He said, "Oh yeah, I'll be teaching loving kindness," and organizer, "I hate loving kindness." And it says, it's had this sense of, and so much of it was, of course, I hate loving kindness because it had a tendency to aversion and ill will already, and that was it just triggered that even more. So that, but to be able to sort of realize, that kind of kindness and caring for one's own well-being is the initial impulse of loving kindness, and learning how to learning to look after oneself. And as one learns that, then one can extend that to others. So that quality of loving kindness becomes much broader. The next hindrance, and the Buddha said that hindrance of ill will, aversion, and the Buddha compares it to having a fever, being ill, and then I would say the relinquishing of that hindrance is like when one recovers from that illness, or one has a sense of basically getting one's life back and feeling healthy again. The next hindrance that is common for meditators is that just sleepiness, drowsiness, dullness, and it's not just sleepiness, but it's sort of like a stiffness of the mind, a turgid quality of the mind. It's a heaviness where there's the mind sinks, and again, that's where that learning how to lift up attention to the meditation, learning how to lift up energy to like giving oneself to the meditation. Because often what happens that leads to dullness is when one sits down and kind of waits for the mind to be peaceful. And then you just fall asleep or go into a state of dullness, because you have to engage in the meditation. You have to engage in the practice. You have to engage in the training of the mind, and have to engage skillfully. Because without that, then the tendency is just sort of to drift. and then you drift for a while, and then you sink. And that's what happens with the mind. So that learning how to, engage attention, encourage the mind to take this interest in a simple object and to sustain it, so that there's a skill that has to be learned, and part of it is paying attention to the mind and what the mind is doing. Part of it is learning how to ground one's awareness in the experience of the body, paying attention to posture, paying attention to the breathing, paying attention to imagery that comes up as you're practicing. That's in the sense alertness that settles in the mind, rather than that sinking of the mind and then drifting in dullness, and that so that there's various skills of learning how to just put forth. The effort is not straining, but it's a refined kind of willingness to engage, rather than just passively wait for the mind to sort of the mind of blissful samadhi to just descend on one. It ain't going to happen. You have to engage in it. So that's where the Buddha uses the image of I'm blanking out on the image that the Buddha uses. Is Yes, thank you. Yes, being in prison. So that, and that's a really apt image for dullness, sleepiness, drowsiness. That being imprisoned, being incarcerated, being not losing one's freedom, and so that and then of course the being able to work skillfully with relinquishing that hindrance is like being released from prison. The next hindrance that the Buddha points to is like restlessness, and worry, or restlessness and worry. So I mean, on one level, say sometimes the mind goes into dullness, as in order to get out of the effort of mindfulness and paying attention. And another way that it copes, because these are like these hindrances are coping mechanisms for when the mind doesn't know what to do with itself, in terms it doesn't know how to be peaceful, doesn't know how to be clear. So okay, what else now? What can I do? So I'll be dull, or I'll just get irritated, or one just gets restless and just give me something to think about, or to worry, get worried and obsessed. And worry about what I did in the past. Oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been like that. What's going to be like in the future? Could be maybe like this. That could be a problem. And it goes on and on. It's this anxiety, worry, restlessness, and there's, especially when it isn't grounded in reality, it doesn't really have a boundary, so you can think up anything to get anxious and worried about, and to get restlessly fret over. So so we do. And that of course, it's not very peaceful or settling. And there's a variety of ways of dealing with the Buddha himself. The first sort of way of dealing with it that he encouraged was allowing the breath to soothe the body and the mind, to use the breath as just really paying attention to that rhythm of the breath, that soothing nature of a neutral object. It really helps to settle that restlessness and bring the mind back to a balance of alertness and presence. And there's other ways of doing it. One is to really take note of the, what is it that one is, say, restlessly worrying about, restlessly proliferating about. And the thing is, of course, when it's restless, it's skipping along and has its own energy. So then to pick up a thought, really be mindful and say, what is that thought? And say, I shouldn't have said such and such, and so whatever. And then to take that thought, I shouldn't have said that to that person. And to take that and then to repeat it consciously. Start using that. I shouldn't have said that. And I shouldn't have said that. And when it's as a restless thought, then it starts proliferating and you start expanding here, expanding there. But when you really try to focus on it and just sustain it, then it becomes absurd. And you can let it go. And when you don't see its absurdity, then of course it sort of goes, doesn't really have any boundaries. It goes here and there. But just taking that thought and sort of repeating it very consciously, that becomes your mantra. But then of course it when you're ready to let it go, then you can let it go. So that's a useful thing. Or taking that, I shouldn't have said such to that person. And, taking it and imagining in your mind of that thought, and then writing it on water. Like I'm just making this imagine. It's right. I shouldn't have said that. And of course, it's gone. I should. And writing it on water, and it disappears. And you can start dissolving those kind of obsessive, restless habits of thought patterns in that way. So that's a skillful means. And the image that the Buddha gives of the hindrance as being as if one were enslaved in some way, and it really feels like that when one is just bound to a restless thought, obsessive worry and anxiety that just gnaws away at one. So that being able to, again, it's sort of gaining freedom. So coming out of that state. And the last hindrance that the Buddha points to is doubt. That sort of skeptical doubt. And, it can be doubt about the teachings, it can be doubt about the practice, it can be doubt about yourself. Can I do it? is the teachings right? And it's interesting that in terms of antidotes, many of the other hindrances have quite direct antidotes, but with doubt, what the Buddha encourages is more of an indirect approach, in the sense of listening to teachings, drawing close to good teachers, drawing close to good examples. Because, say, the function of doubt, of course, is to doubt. And if you put your attention onto a particular antidote, well, the next thing you do is you'll doubt it. So it's more like you want to be building up a sense of confidence and support from the external circumstances, people, teachings. So I'm just learning how to draw close to the things that are supportive, and because nowadays there's any number of way. I mean, there's physical places of practice and teachings going on, like Abhayagiri, but there's and there's so many places around these days, and there's any number of virtual means of drawing close to the teachings and people, whether it's through audio recordings or YouTube, or there's this amazing amount of material on YouTube of just being able to see and experience. Ing was telling me yesterday, like this, and we only just recently started putting our stuff up on YouTube, and there's already like 400 or 500 people that are subscribed to the channel. So I thought, oh, really? And he just told me that yesterday. So that's a good thing. And there's and there's lots out there, or phone apps that give you Dhamma teachings and chanting and whatnot. So there's lots of things available to help to support that aspiration for practice and helping to settle the mind. Because that and the way that the image that the Buddha uses is like traveling in the wilderness, being lost in the wilderness, and not really being sure where home is, am I going to make it to my destination? And that's what doubt does. So then being able to get some direction on the path is helping to free the mind from its doubt. So these are say, classical teachings for Buddhist meditation and Buddhist practice in training the mind, and just learning how to recognize these patterns, because as I said, they're like coping mechanisms for the mind when it doesn't know what to do. How do I deal with this situation? How do I deal with my mind in this circumstance, and the circumstance of trying to be peaceful? What do I do? It goes to a habit of that is actually a hindrance. And so learning it, just recognizing it, and then being able to guide and encourage the mind back to awareness, back to alertness, attentiveness. And by doing that, there's this quality of samadhi, or of a peaceful clarity, can establish it within the heart. It's a useful thing, essential thing for our spiritual development. So I'll offer that for reflection this afternoon.